I had memorized my wife's lies the way other men memorize sports statistics. The support group met Thursdays at 7 p.m. She needed the alone time in the car. The sessions ran until 9. She always came home calmer. What I couldn't memorize was the exact moment I'd started counting them. 11 years of marriage to Natalie Bennett. 11 years of building something I thought was permanent. I'm a structural engineer by trade. I spend my days calculating load-bearing capacities, stress tolerances, the exact point at which materials fail. I should have seen my own foundation cracking. It started 8 months ago. The sleeping problems came first. I'd wake at 3 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty, and I'd stumble downstairs to discover her curled on the couch, staring at her phone with an expression I couldn't read. Then came the irritability, snapping at me over small things. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the route I took to the grocery store, the shirt I chose for dinner with her parents. And the distance, that was the worst part. The way she'd flinch when I touched her unexpectedly, like my hands had become unfamiliar. I chalked it up to anxiety, maybe depression. When she told me she'd found a support group at Grace Lutheran Church, I felt nothing but relief. Dr. Nunez runs it, she'd explained over dinner, picking at her salmon. She's a therapist who specializes in women's anxiety issues. There's about 12 of us. It's really helping. That's wonderful, Nat. I'd reached across the table to squeeze her hand. I'm proud of you for taking this step. She'd smiled at me, and I'd believed every word. For 3 months, every Thursday like clockwork, she'd kiss me goodbye at 6:45, and I'd watch her taillights disappear down Maple Street. She'd come home around 9:15, smelling like the lavender lotion she kept in her purse, and she'd seem lighter somehow, more at peace. Good session? I'd ask. Really good, she'd say. We talked about setting boundaries tonight. It's making me think differently about things. I wanted to believe it so badly that I ignored the small things. The new underwear that appeared in her drawer, not the comfortable cotton she'd always worn, but something silkier, more deliberate. Lace and satin in colors she'd never bought before. The way her phone was always face down on the counter now, when she used to leave it anywhere. The gym membership she'd signed up for in January, but seemed to use only sporadically, always at odd hours when I couldn't accompany her. You should come with me sometime, I'd offered. We could make it a couples thing. Oh, honey, I go at weird times. You'd hate it. Besides, the gym is my thinking time. I told myself I was being paranoid. Natalie loved me. We had a good life in Westbrook, Connecticut, a colonial with a wraparound porch that we'd spent 2 years renovating, careers we'd built together, plans for the future we'd whispered about in bed. 11 years doesn't just evaporate, but love makes you stupid, and trust makes you blind. The night everything changed was a Thursday in late September. I'd been out at a job site in Bridgeport, reviewing foundation work on a new commercial development. Murphy's crew had questions about the reinforcement specs, and I'd stayed late to walk them through the calculations. The usual route home takes me through downtown, but a water main break had closed 3 blocks of Cedar Avenue. Orange cones and flashing lights forced everyone to detour, and I followed the stream of traffic west on Thornton, past the strip malls and chain restaurants, past the elementary school where neither of us had ever enrolled a child. That had been a conversation we'd tabled and never reopened. And past Grace Lutheran Church. It was 7:45 p.m., Thursday, support group night. The parking lot was empty. I pulled into the lot without thinking, my hands moving before my brain could catch up. The building was dark, not a single light in any window. The grass around the entrance needed mowing. And there, on the marquee sign out front, in those black plastic letters that churches use to share Bible verses and service times, Thursday. Bible study, canceled until March. I sat in my car for 11 minutes. I counted. The engine was still running, heat blowing against my face, and I just sat there staring at those words. My mind kept trying to construct alternative explanations. Maybe she went to a different location tonight. Maybe the support group met somewhere else in the building, with a separate entrance. Maybe the sign was old, outdated, left over from some previous schedule. But I knew. Somewhere in my gut, in that place where truth lives even when you're not ready to hear it, I knew. I drove home, walked through the front door at 8:20, poured myself a bourbon I didn't drink and sat in the living room with the television off. The house felt different already. The same furniture, the same photos on the walls, but everything slightly askew, like an earthquake had shifted the foundation by inches. Waiting. Natalie came through the door at 9:15, right on schedule. Her cheeks were flushed, pink with something that wasn't the autumn chill. Her hair was slightly different than when she'd left, restyled, or maybe just tousled in a way that happens when you run your fingers through it. Or when someone else does. "Hey, babe." She dropped her purse on the entryway table, the same spot she'd dropped it 1,000 times, and walked over to kiss my cheek. "Good session tonight. We talked about managing expectations in relationships. Very relevant stuff." Her lips were warm against my skin. And underneath the lavender lotion, underneath the mint of her toothpaste or gum or whatever she'd used to freshen her breath, there was something else. Something masculine. A cologne I didn't recognize because I'd never worn it. Woodsy, with hints of leather. Expensive. "That's great, honey," I said. My voice sounded normal. I was surprised by that. "I'm glad it's helping." She smiled at me. The same smile she'd given me on our wedding day, on our anniversary trips to the coast, on 1,000 ordinary mornings over coffee. I'd loved that smile. I'd proposed to that smile. Now I cataloged it. The way her eyes crinkled at the corners, the slight upturn of her lips, the practiced warmth that I suddenly realized might always have been practiced. "How was your day?" she asked, settling onto the couch beside me. "Long. Murphy's crew had questions about the Bridgeport site. Took longer than expected." "You work too hard." She curled against my side, and I let her. "We should plan a vacation, somewhere warm." "Sure," I said. "Let's look at dates this weekend." I said nothing else that night. We watched a show together on the couch, her feet in my lap like always, and I rubbed them absently while my mind worked through stress calculations of a different kind. I noted every detail. The way she checked her phone twice during the show, angling it away from me. The way she yawned at 10:30 and suggested we head to bed. The way she fell asleep within minutes while I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling. The following Thursday, I tested her. "Hey, I can drive you tonight," I said casually over breakfast, not looking up from my coffee. "I've got to stop by the Henderson site anyway, it's practically on the way." I watched her reaction the way I watch concrete cure. Patient, attentive, looking for cracks. Her shoulders tensed. Just for a moment, just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. The micro-expression of panic that flashed across her features before she smoothed them into something pleasant. "Oh, that's sweet." She buttered her toast with careful precision. "But no, I actually need the alone time in the car. Dr. Nunes, she's the facilitator. She says the drive is part of the process. Time to decompress, you know? Transition from home mode to therapy mode." "Sure," I said. "Makes sense." "You're not upset?" "Why would I be upset? You're taking care of yourself. That's what matters." She smiled, relieved. "You're the best, you know that?" That evening, I stood at the kitchen window with the lights off, invisible in the darkness, and watched her pull out of the driveway. She'd changed clothes since breakfast, a blouse I didn't recognize, tighter than her usual style, and she'd refreshed her makeup. For a support group, for therapy. She turned left at the end of our street. Grace Lutheran Church was to the right. I'm not an impulsive man. In my line of work, impulsive men get people killed. A miscalculated load, an overlooked stress point, a rushed inspection. That's how buildings collapse with families inside. I've seen the aftermath of sloppy engineering, the rubble, the rescue workers, the lawsuits that destroy careers. I approach problems methodically, systematically. I gather data. I run calculations. I make decisions based on evidence, not emotion. So I didn't follow her myself. I didn't confront her with accusations I couldn't prove. I didn't check her phone in the middle of the night or hire some amateur to tail her car and get caught. Instead, I called Tyler Reeves. Tyler and I roomed together at UConn, back when we were 19 and stupid and thought we'd live forever. He'd been pre-law before switching to criminal justice, and after graduation he'd gone into corporate security, working for firms that needed problems solved discreetly. We'd stayed close over the years, poker nights, football games, the occasional fishing trip where we'd drink too much beer and solve none of the world's problems. He was the kind of friend who'd help you move a body without asking questions. Not that I was planning anything like that. "I need a name," I told him over the phone, standing in my office with the door closed. My voice was even, controlled. "Someone good, licensed, someone who can follow a person without getting made." Tyler was quiet for a moment. I could hear him breathing, considering. "This about Natalie?" "Just give me the name, Ty." "Logan, if something's going on, we should talk about it. You don't have to handle this alone." "The name?" He sighed. "Frank Holloway. Retired BPD detective, does private work now. He's expensive, but he's the best. Testified in probably 50 court cases. Never had his evidence thrown out." A pause. "And Logan, I'm sorry, man." "Don't be sorry yet. I don't know anything for certain." But I did. We both knew I did. Frank Holloway operated out of a small office above a dry cleaner in Hamden. The building smelled like chemical solvents and steam, and the stairs creaked under my weight as I climbed to the second floor. His door was frosted glass with his name stenciled in black. Holloway Investigations, EST 2015. He was 58 years old, built like a former linebacker running to seed, with gray hair buzzed military short and eyes that had seen enough human darkness to be surprised by nothing. His office was sparse. Metal desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet that looked like it had survived a war. No personal photos, no decorations, just function. "Mr. Bennett." He didn't stand to shake my hand, just gestured to the chair across from him. "Tyler vouched for you. That means something. What do you need?" "$2,500 retainer," he said before I could answer, sliding a contract across his desk. "I'll need her schedule, vehicle information, recent photo. I work alone, I report only to you, and everything I collect is documented and admissible if it comes to that." "It might come to that." "Usually does." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "How long you been married?" 11 years. "Kids?" "No." He nodded slowly. "That makes it cleaner. Not easier, but cleaner. No custody battles, no using children as weapons. Seen too much of that." He pulled out a legal pad and a pen. "Tell me what you know. Don't leave anything out, even if it seems small. Small details catch cheaters." I told him everything. The support group lie, the empty parking lot, the cologne, the left turn when she should have gone right, the new underwear and face-down phone, the gym membership that didn't seem to involve much gym. He wrote it all down in a cramped, efficient hand, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "What time does she usually leave? Does she take the same route? Any credit cards you don't have access to?" "She switched to a personal card about 6 months ago," I said. "Said she wanted her own account for personal expenses. I didn't think anything of it at the time." Frank's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "That's usually the first sign. They need financial separation to hide the spending. Hotels, gifts, dinners. It adds up. They can't risk you seeing those charges." I trusted her. "They count on that." He set down his pen. "I'll start Thursday. That seems to be the primary window. but I'll also run her plates, check for any secondary locations she frequents. If she's using that personal card at the same places repeatedly, that tells a story. I paid him in cash. $2,500 I'd withdrawn in small amounts over 3 days, so it wouldn't show as a single large transaction on our joint account. I was thinking like a man with something to hide now. Maybe that's what infidelity does. It makes everyone sneaky, even the innocent. At home, I started keeping a journal. Not on my computer, where she might stumble across it. Not in a notebook she might find while cleaning. A small text file on an encrypted flash drive I kept on my keychain, always in my pocket. Dates, observations, anything that might matter later. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, documenting the woman I'd shared a bed with for 11 years, and I hated it. I hated that I'd become this person, suspicious, watchful, parsing every word she said for hidden meanings. But I hated the alternative more. Being the oblivious husband, the clueless fool, the joke everyone else was in on except me. Frank's first report came 8 days later. We met at a diner off I-91, the kind of place where nobody looks twice at two men having a quiet conversation in a back booth. Red vinyl seats. Coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since morning. He slid a manila folder across the table. Thursday evening, he said, keeping his voice low. Subject left residence at 6:47 p.m. Proceeded not to Grace Lutheran Church but to the Marriott Courtyard in New Haven. Arrival time 7:09 p.m. Parked in the rear lot, entered through the side entrance. Proceeded directly to room 214. She had a key card. I opened the folder. Inside were photographs. High resolution, clearly time-stamped. Natalie walking across the parking lot, her face in profile, recognizable beyond any doubt. Natalie at the hotel door, key card in hand. Natalie's car, our car, the Honda Accord we'd bought together 3 years ago, parked in the shadows like she'd done this before. Like she knew exactly where to position it to avoid being seen from the street. She exited at 8:47 p.m., Frank continued. Drove directly home. Arrival time consistent with what you'd expect if she'd actually been at the church. My hands weren't shaking. I noted that with distant surprise. I'd expected trembling, rage, some physical manifestation of the earthquake happening inside me. Instead, there was only a cold, clear stillness. The same feeling I get when I find a critical flaw in a building design. That moment when you realize something is very wrong, but the only way through is forward. There was another vehicle, Frank said, parked near hers. Silver Audi Q5, Connecticut plates. He flipped to another page in the folder. Registered to Whitmore and Associates, LLC. The name hit me like a physical blow, like someone had swung a 2x4 into my chest. Whitmore and Associates. The architecture firm. We'd partnered with them on 3 projects in the last 4 years. The Brantford Medical Center, the Riverside Commons development, the new library annex at Southern Connecticut State. Good projects, clean working relationships, professional respect. The managing partner's name was Derek Whitmore. He'd come to my house for dinner. 6 months ago, a casual thing, couples getting together. He'd complimented Natalie's cooking, laughed at my jokes, talked about his kids. He'd shaken my hand at the door when he left and said we should do it again sometime. He'd sent a fruit basket when my mother died 2 years ago, with a card that said, "Thinking of you during this difficult time." I'd liked him. I'd respected him. "You know that name," Frank said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." My voice came from somewhere far away. "I know that name." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Natalie, listening to her breathe, watching the shadows move across the ceiling as car headlights swept past our window. She was peaceful, content, dreaming whatever dreams an unfaithful wife dreams while her husband lies awake beside her, cataloging the wreckage. Derek Whitmore. I pulled up everything I knew about him. running through memories like files in a cabinet. 44 years old. Married to Caroline Whitmore, née Davenport, whose family had founded the architecture firm in 1987. Her father had started it. Derek had married into the legacy. Father of 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, 16 and 14. Active in Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, all the civic organizations that respectable men join to prove they're respectable. I remembered the holiday party 14 months ago, my firm's annual gala at the Omni, open bar and a jazz quartet, and too many handshakes with people whose names I'd forget by morning. Natalie had worn a green dress that matched her eyes. She'd spent an hour deciding between that and a black number, asking my opinion 3 times. She'd been nervous, she said. She always got anxious at work functions where she didn't know anyone. I'd introduced her to Derek myself. Derek, this is my wife Natalie. Nat, Derek Whitmore. We're partnering on the Branford project. Lovely to meet you. He'd taken her hand, held it a moment too long maybe, but I thought nothing of it. That's what charming people do. They'd talked for maybe 15 minutes while I was cornered by a client who wanted to discuss zoning variances. When I came back, Natalie had been laughing at something Derek said, her head tilted in that way women have when they're charmed. She'd touched his arm, just briefly, just casually, and I hadn't thought anything of it. He's nice, she'd said in the car home. Good sense of humor. He's a solid guy, I'd agreed. His firm does good work. How many times had they laughed together since? How many times had she touched him in ways I couldn't bear to imagine? How many hotel rooms had witnessed what I'd been too trusting to suspect? Frank continued surveillance for another 2 weeks. The pattern was consistent. Thursdays at the Marriott, room 214. Same parking spots, same side entrance, same window of time. They'd built a routine, my wife and her lover, as comfortable as any married couple. But I needed more than pattern. I needed timeline. I found it in our old credit card statements. Natalie had switched to her personal card 6 months ago, but before that, everything had run through our joint account. I logged into our bank's website late one night while she slept, going back through 18 months of transactions, looking for anomalies. There it was. The Marriott Courtyard in New Haven. First charge, 11 months ago, 3 months before the support group started. A Wednesday, $189 plus tax. Then again, 2 weeks later, a Thursday this time. Then weekly. The charges stopped abruptly when she switched cards. She'd learned to cover her tracks, but the dates created a pattern I couldn't unsee. The support group wasn't her slipping into an affair. The affair had already been running for 8 months when she invented the cover story. The anxiety I'd attributed to depression or life stress, that was guilt, pure and simple. The support group lie was just logistics, a way to regularize the deception so she could stop making individual excuses. She'd been sleeping with Derek Whitmore for nearly a year. And she'd been lying about it so smoothly, so consistently, that I'd never suspected a thing. I thought about the last year of my life through this new lens. The anniversary dinner in August, candlelit table at that French place she loved, where she'd held my hand and told me she loved me more than ever. The long weekend in Vermont where we'd hiked and made love and talked about maybe trying for children. Sometime soon, when the timing's right. The quiet Tuesday nights on the couch, her feet in my lap, watching shows we'd picked together. All of it built on sand. All of it a performance. Every kiss, every whispered, "I love you," every moment I'd thought was real, constructed on a foundation of lies. 2 days after I put the timeline together, I walked into the law offices of Torres and Associates on Elm Street in New Haven. The building was old brick, converted from a warehouse with exposed beams and industrial chic fixtures that probably cost more than they looked. Rebecca Torres was 45, whip-smart, and had a reputation for handling high-asset divorces with surgical precision. A colleague whose own divorce had turned into a battlefield had recommended her. She'll fight for you, he'd said. But more importantly, she'll make sure you don't do anything stupid in the meantime. Her office was all glass and warm wood, diplomas on the wall from Yale Law, photos of her with various local politicians. She was smaller than I expected, barely 5'3" in heels, but there was something in her eyes that suggested underestimating her would be a mistake. I'm not here to file yet, I told her. I'm here to understand my options. She nodded, unsurprised. That's wise. Most people come in too hot, wanting to burn everything down immediately. Tell me the situation. I laid it out. The affair, the evidence, the timeline, the identity of the other man. She took notes on a legal pad, asked clarifying questions, and when I finished, she leaned back in her chair. First, the good news. Connecticut is an equitable distribution state, she said. That means assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally. The court considers multiple factors: length of marriage, contribution of each spouse, economic circumstances, age, health. She paused. And fault. Adultery. Yes, it's not weighted as heavily as it once was. We're not in the 1950s. But a documented pattern of infidelity affects credibility. It affects alimony determinations. And your wife hasn't worked in 7 years. She quit her marketing job to focus on wellness. I supported that decision. Then normally she'd be looking at significant alimony, potentially for many years, given the length of the marriage and her time out of the workforce. She'd argue she sacrificed career advancement for the marriage. Rebecca smiled thinly. With what you've shown me, that calculus changes substantially. You have photographic evidence, hotel records, a clear timeline. If you can add a witness, someone who knew about the affair, I might have one. Good. Keep gathering. Don't confront her. Don't move assets around. Don't do anything that could be construed as acting in bad faith. When you're ready to file, we'll be thorough. She handed me her card. I'm sorry you're going through this, Mr. Bennett, but you're handling it correctly. Most men in your position have already confronted their wives, tipped them off, given them time to destroy evidence and coordinate stories. You're thinking ahead. I'm an engineer, I said. I don't build things that collapse. I ran into Jessica Palmer 3 weeks into my investigation. Or rather, she ran into me, literally, rounding a corner at Wilson's Hardware with an armload of paint samples while I was picking up supplies for a deck project I had no intention of completing. Logan, oh my God, I'm so sorry. She was already bending to gather the scattered cards when she looked up and recognition flickered across her face. Something else too. Something that looked unmistakably like guilt. Jessica had been Natalie's best friend for years. They'd met at a yoga studio before I even knew my wife, and they'd been inseparable through our entire courtship and the first 8 years of marriage. Brunch dates every Sunday, shopping trips that lasted entire afternoons, wine nights that went too late and ended with one of them sleeping on the other's couch. Then, about 2 years ago, they'd had a falling out. Natalie never told me the details, just said they'd grown apart and wanted different things. Sometimes friendships run their course, she'd said when I asked. It's sad, but it's life. Now Jessica was standing in front of me in the paint aisle of Wilson's Hardware, and she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Hey, Jessica, I kept my voice neutral. How have you been? Good, good. You know, busy. She clutched the paint samples to her chest like armor. Repainting the guest room. Terracotta or sage, I can't decide. She laughed, but it was forced. How are things with you and Nat? The question was too careful, too weighted. This wasn't casual small talk from an old friend catching up. This was something else. Things are fine, I said. Why do you ask? She opened her mouth, closed it, shook her head. No reason, I think about you guys sometimes, even though Nat and I don't really talk anymore. I always thought you two were good together. Jessica. I lowered my voice. An elderly man was examining drill bits nearby. What do you know? She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. Mascara was going to run if she wasn't careful. I can't. It's not my place. And it was so long ago. I'm asking you to make it your place. She glanced around the hardware store, at the other customers browsing aisles, at the bored teenager running the register who couldn't have cared less about two people having an intense conversation in aisle 7. Not here, she whispered. Can we? There's a coffee shop around the corner. Been there, done that. I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. I was there in 5. She arrived in 8, hands shaking as she wrapped them around a cup of chamomile tea she didn't drink. I should have told you a long time ago, she said, without preamble. I felt sick about it ever since. Like physically sick, Logan. There were nights I couldn't sleep. But she was my friend, my best friend. And I thought maybe she'd stop. Maybe it was just a moment of weakness. Maybe I'd talk sense into her and she'd come back to you and everything would be fine. Tell me, 18 months ago. Jessica stared at her tea like it contained answers. Natalie told me she had feelings for someone she'd been talking to online. Instagram DMs at first, then texts, then calls. She said it hadn't gone physical yet, but she was thinking about it. More than thinking. Planning. 18 months. Even longer than I'd thought. I told her she was being an idiot. Jessica's voice cracked. I told her you were a good man. A genuinely good man, Logan. I always said that. And she was going to destroy her marriage for what? Some guy sliding into her DMs? I said it was a fantasy, that she was confusing attention with love. What did she say? She said I didn't understand, that this was different, that she felt things with him she'd never felt with you. Jessica wiped her eyes with a napkin. Those were her exact words. He makes me feel things Logan never has. Like 11 years of marriage meant nothing. Did she tell you who? Derek something. I don't remember the last name. She might not have even told me. But she'd met him through your work, I know that much. Some architect. Derek Whitmore. My wife had been having an affair with a man whose hand I'd shaken, whose firm I'd partnered with, whose children I'd heard about over coffee, and she'd been bragging about it to her best friend. When I told her to stop, Jessica continued, she got defensive, then angry. Said I was judging her, that I didn't understand passion because my own marriage was boring and safe. We had a huge fight, worst one we'd ever had, and she cut me off completely. 2 years of friendship, gone overnight, blocked me on everything. She told me you'd grown apart. Of course she did. Jessica laughed bitterly. She wasn't going to tell you the real reason, that I knew her dirty little secret and refused to be complicit in it. I sat with that for a moment. The coffee shop bustled around us. College students on laptops, a mother wrangling a toddler, a couple in the corner holding hands across the table. Normal life. Ordinary people. Would you be willing to give a statement? I asked. To my attorney? Yes. No hesitation. Yes, I'll do whatever you need. I should have called you that night 18 months ago. I've regretted staying silent every single day since. If it makes even a small difference now, then yes. Derek Whitmore's architecture firm wasn't entirely his. I discovered that during my research, the kind of quiet digging that happens late at night when your wife thinks you're working on project documents. Whitmore and Associates was 40% owned by the Davenport Family Trust. Caroline Whitmore's family. Her father had founded the firm in 1987, built it from a 2-person operation into one of the most respected architecture practices in Connecticut. When he retired, his son-in-law took over management. But the family retained ownership. I pulled the partnership agreement from public filings. There, on page 23, was the clause that would end Derek Whitmore's career. a standard morality provision requiring partners to maintain conduct consistent with the firm's reputation and values. Adultery with a client's spouse would certainly violate that. If Caroline learned about the affair, Derek wouldn't just lose his marriage. He'd lose everything. His firm, his reputation, his place in the professional community he'd spent 20 years building. He had far more to lose than Natalie did. And sitting in my home office at 2 a.m. reading through legal documents by the light of my computer screen, I realized that Natalie wasn't my only target. Derek Whitmore had helped destroy my marriage. He'd looked me in the eye, shaken my hand, sent condolences when my mother died, all while sleeping with my wife. He'd smiled at me across conference tables, discussed load calculations and design specifications, played the consummate professional. He would face consequences too. The Westbrook Community Foundation Gala was scheduled for the first Saturday in November. Black tie, $500 a plate, held at the historic Hawthorne Estate on the outskirts of town. 200 of Westbrook's finest citizens gathered to raise money for local charities while demonstrating their social status to each other. I'd been on the planning committee for 3 years. It was good for business, good for networking, and Natalie had always enjoyed getting dressed up for a night out. She'd spend hours on hair and makeup, and I'd admired the results, proud to have her on my arm. This year, I had different plans for the evening. I knew from the committee work that Derek and Caroline Whitmore would be attending. They'd been gala regulars for years, part of the social fabric that held Westbrook's upper middle class together. Table assignments were my responsibility this year. I made sure they'd be visible, right in the center of the action. In the weeks leading up to the gala, I was the perfect husband. Attentive, affectionate. I brought Natalie flowers on a random Tuesday, yellow roses, her favorite. I suggested date nights, cooked dinner twice when she complained about being tired, made love to her with an intensity that seemed to surprise and please her. "What's gotten into you?" she asked one night, curled against me in bed. "Just appreciating what I have," I said. "We should never take each other for granted." She kissed me. "I love you, Logan." "I love you too." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Meanwhile, her behavior grew more brazen. The Thursday meetings stretched longer. She started coming home at 9:45, then 10, apologizing about really productive sessions and breakthrough conversations. A few work emergencies appeared on other days, requiring her to leave suddenly for hours. Once, she claimed her sister needed help with something urgent, but I watched through the window as she drove away in the direction of New Haven, not her sister's house in Guilford. She was getting sloppy because she thought she was winning. She thought she'd successfully managed me into complacency, trained me to accept her lies without question. 3 days before the gala, I moved boxes to my sister Ashley's house while Natalie was at her book club. Another Thursday, another cover story, clothes, documents, important papers. The things from my childhood that mattered. My father's watch, my grandfather's toolkit, photos that couldn't be replaced. Ashley watched me carry boxes through her front door without saying much. She was 2 years older than me, and we'd been close since childhood, especially after our parents divorced. She'd never warmed to Natalie. There'd always been a low-level tension there, comments about how she seemed distant or didn't really seem present at family gatherings. "You're not going to tell me what's happening," Ashley said when I set down the last box. It wasn't a question. "Not yet, but soon." "Is she cheating on you?" I looked at my sister. "What makes you ask that?" "Logan, I've watched that woman for 11 years. She's never been fully there with you, like she was always waiting for something better to come along." Ashley shook her head. "I should have said something sooner." "Would I have listened?" "No, but I should have said it anyway." She hugged me hard. This sister who'd protected me from bullies in elementary school and cried at my wedding and called every Sunday even when I was too busy to talk. "I'm here," she whispered. "Whatever you need, whatever comes next, I'm here." The night before the gala, I prepared 2 manila envelopes in my home office, door locked, Natalie asleep upstairs. The first was for her. Photographs, hotel receipts, the complete timeline of her betrayal, and a single typed page that read, "I know. My attorney will contact you Monday. Do not come home." The second was for Caroline Whitmore. The same evidence, plus a brief letter. "Mrs. Whitmore, I apologize for being the bearer of this news, but I believe you deserve to know the truth before anyone else. Your husband has been conducting an affair with my wife for over 18 months. The enclosed documentation provides dates, locations, and photographic evidence. I'm sorry for the circumstances under which we're meeting." I sealed both envelopes, turned off the light, and went upstairs to sleep next to my wife for the last time. I slept better than I had in months. The night of the gala, Natalie was radiant. She'd bought a new dress, crimson silk that hugged her curves, $800 on our joint card, which I found grimly appropriate. Blood red for a blood night. She'd spent 2 hours on her hair, sweeping it up in an elegant twist, and her makeup was flawless, subtle enhancement that made her eyes seem larger, her lips fuller. "How do I look?" She did a small spin in our bedroom. "Stunning," I said, and meant it. Beauty and betrayal aren't mutually exclusive. She was beautiful. She was also about to lose everything. "You clean up pretty well yourself." She crossed the room to straighten my tie, her fingers brushing my collar, and I wondered if she'd done the same thing for Derek before their Thursday meetings. Probably. Probably she'd worn those silk things I'd found in her drawer, prepared herself for him the way wives used to prepare for husbands. "It's going to be a good night," she said. "I can feel it." "I think you're right." The Hawthorne estate was magnificent, a 19th century mansion donated to the city decades ago, now used for events like this. String lights wound through the gardens. Uniformed valets took keys from arriving guests. A string quartet played Mozart in the foyer. Everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine. Elegant women, distinguished men, champagne flutes catching the light from chandeliers. We checked in, accepted glasses of Veuve Clicquot from a passing server, and made our way through the crowd. Natalie was in her element, greeting acquaintances, commenting on gowns, playing the role of supportive spouse to perfection. If I hadn't known better, I'd have believed we were happy. I spotted Derek and Caroline Whitmore near the silent auction tables. He was in a classic black tux, silver-templed and handsome in that boarding school way of men who'd never had to struggle. Caroline was elegant in navy blue, laughing at something another woman had said. They looked happy. They looked like the kind of couple that other couples envied. Derek caught Natalie's eye across the room. Just for a moment. Just a flicker. Then she looked away too quickly. I saw it all. "I need to circulate," I told Natalie. "Planning committee duties. Will you be okay for a bit?" "Of course. I'll find the Hendersons. Susan mentioned wanting to catch up." I squeezed her hand once, the last time I would ever touch her as her husband, though she didn't know it, and walked away. I found Caroline Whitmore alone at the bar at exactly 9:15. She was ordering a glass of Sancerre, her back to the room, a momentary island of solitude in the sea of social obligation. Up close, I could see the care she'd taken with her appearance. The diamond earrings that probably cost more than my car, the subtle perfection of makeup that required professional application, the elegant line of her neck above the navy dress. She was someone's mother, someone's wife, someone who was about to have her world shattered. "Mrs. Whitmore." I kept my voice low, steady. "I'm Logan Bennett. We've met a few times at industry functions. My engineering firm has partnered with Whitmore and Associates on several projects." She turned, polite smile in place. The smile of a woman accustomed to making conversation at events like this, smoothly gracious with half-strangers. "Of course, Mr. Bennett. Your firm did the structural work on Riverside Commons, didn't you?" Beautiful project. Derek speaks highly of your team. Thank you. I'm sure he does. I held her gaze, watching confusion flicker across her features at my tone. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm sorry to do this here. I'm sorry to do this at all. There's no good way and no good time. But I believe you deserve to know before anyone else. I handed her the envelope. Her smile faltered. She looked down at the manila rectangle in her hands, then back at me. What is this? The truth about your husband and my wife. I'm sorry. I walked away before she could respond. Before she could ask questions I didn't want to answer. Before she could open it, and I'd have to watch her face when she understood. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard the sound of paper tearing. Then a sharp intake of breath. Then nothing at all. Just the quartet playing Vivaldi and the murmur of 200 people who didn't yet know that 2 marriages were about to detonate in their midst. Natalie was near the hors d'oeuvres display when I found her, chatting with a woman from her former yoga studio, laughing about something inconsequential. I touched her elbow, and she turned with that practiced smile. Hey you, successful circulating? I leaned close, my lips near her ear, intimate as a lover's whisper. I know about Derek. I know about the Marriott. I know about the Thursday nights and the lies and all of it. Every single thing, Natalie. Every hotel room. Every message. Every time you came home smelling like his cologne and told me about your support group. She went rigid. I felt the tremor run through her body. I pressed the second envelope into her hands. My attorney will contact you Monday. Don't come home tonight. Don't come home ever. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I just walked, passing through the beautiful people in their beautiful clothes, past the silent auction and the string quartet and the champagne towers, out through the French doors and into the November night. Behind me, I heard a woman scream. Not Natalie, Caroline. A single, sharp cry of rage and betrayal that cut through the Mozart like a knife through silk. Then raised voices. Then more screaming. Then the confused murmur of a crowd that didn't understand what was happening. I didn't look back. I walked to the valet stand, handed over my ticket, and waited in the cold autumn air until my car appeared. The night was clear, stars visible even through the ambient light of the estate. Beautiful night, terrible night, both at once. I drove home to a house that was no longer mine in any way that mattered. Changed the locks, legally with Rebecca's guidance, since my name was primary on the deed. Natalie's belongings were already in the garage, neatly boxed. I'd done that the week before, during one of her emergencies. Then I poured myself a bourbon. And this time, I drank it. The fallout was spectacular. Natalie arrived home at 11:47 p.m. I watched through the upstairs window, lights off, invisible in the darkness. She tried the front door. Her key didn't work. She tried again, then again. Then she stood on the porch we'd picked out together, the porch where we'd hosted summer barbecues and watched 4th of July fireworks, and she started to cry. She called my phone. I let it ring. She called again. And again. 47 times over the next 3 days. I saved the voicemails but didn't listen beyond the first few seconds of each. Enough to confirm she'd called, not enough to let her voice burrow into my head. Her belongings were in the garage. I'd left the side door unlocked. Derek Whitmore's destruction was faster, messier, more complete. Caroline filed for divorce within 72 hours, her family's attorneys moving with the precision of old money protecting itself. The morality clause in his partnership agreement was invoked on day 4. By the end of the month, he was out, not just divorced, but unemployed, his name stripped from the firm his father-in-law had built. I heard through professional contacts that he'd tried to fight it, claimed the clause was unenforceable, but the Davenport family had decades of relationships with Connecticut's legal establishment. He never had a chance. His children stopped speaking to him. His professional network evaporated. His name became a cautionary tale whispered in architecture circles. Did you hear about Whitmore? Affair with a client's wife. Lost everything. Natalie tried a different approach. She hired an aggressive attorney, Marcus Webb, known for representing difficult women in difficult divorces, who attempted to reframe the narrative. Logan Bennett was emotionally unavailable, cold, possibly abusive. The marriage had failed due to his neglect, his workaholism, his inability to connect. The strategy lasted about 3 weeks. When Rebecca Torres presented our evidence, Frank's photographs, the hotel records, Jessica's sworn statement, the complete timeline of deception, Webb advised his client to settle. You can fight this, I imagined him telling her, but you'll lose, and it will be expensive. Connecticut's equitable distribution worked in my favor. Documented adultery, her voluntary departure from the workforce, my primary contribution to our assets over 11 years. She'd expected decades of alimony. She received 2 years of rehabilitative support. Enough to get back on her feet, not enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. The house sold in February. I kept the larger share due to my down payment documentation and the appreciation that had occurred during the marriage. My business remained separate property, protected by records showing I'd started it before we met. When the final papers were signed, Natalie Bennett, soon to be Natalie Nunez again, her maiden name, walked away with approximately $95,000. A fraction of what she'd expected. A fraction of what she'd gambled our marriage for. Derek reached out to me 3 months after my divorce was final. A handwritten letter, delivered to my office, requesting a meeting. I know I have no right to ask, he wrote, but I'd like the chance to apologize in person, just once. You'll never hear from me again. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Public place, daytime, neutral ground. A coffee shop in Milford, far from Westbrook's gossip networks. He looked diminished. Thinner, grayer, the confidence stripped away like paint from weathered wood. His suit didn't fit as well as it once had. He'd lost weight, or maybe just couldn't afford the tailoring anymore. He was living in a studio apartment now, I'd heard, trying to restart a career that had his ruined reputation attached to it. Thank you for coming, he said. I said nothing. Waited. I know it doesn't mean anything. He stared at his coffee, couldn't meet my eyes. I know I can't undo what I did, but I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Not just sorry I got caught. Sorry I did it at all. I destroyed my marriage. I helped destroy yours. I hurt my children in ways that might never heal. You came to my house for dinner. My voice was flat. You shook my hand. You sat at my table and ate food my wife cooked and talked about your kids' soccer games. You looked me in the eye. I know. You sent me a fruit basket when my mother died. A fruit basket with a card about difficult times. And the whole time you were sleeping with my wife. I know. His voice broke. I know what I did. I live with it every single day. I wake up in an apartment that costs $800 a month and I remember the house I used to have, the family I used to have, the career I used to have. And I know I did it to myself. Good, I stood up. I don't forgive you. I will never forgive you. I want you to understand that. I want you to carry it. I left him there with his cold coffee and his regrets. I never spoke to him again. A year after the gala, life had reconstructed itself into something new. I was living in a condo in downtown New Haven. Modern, clean lines, 10th floor with a view of the harbor. Different from the colonial Natalie and I had shared, and that was the point. The engineering firm had grown. I'd taken on 2 partners, expanded into sustainable design, landed contracts I'd only dreamed about before. I was seeing someone. Rachel, we'd met at a fundraiser, bonded over a shared dislike of rubber chicken dinners. She was a pediatrician, divorced herself, no kids. Smart and funny and direct in a way Natalie never was. We weren't serious yet. Maybe never would be. But she made me laugh, and I'd forgotten how much I needed that. Tyler came by every Thursday for poker. Ashley had me over for Sunday dinners with her husband and kids. I was building something new, and some days I went hours without thinking about the woman I'd married. Then a letter arrived. Return address, Jessica Palmer. Inside was a single sheet of paper and several printed pages. Her note read, I found these while cleaning out an old laptop. Natalie used my computer once, years ago, and it cached her email login. I thought you should know the full truth. I'm sorry for all of it. The printed pages were email exchanges between Natalie and Derek. Screenshots from an account she'd apparently used briefly and forgotten about, auto-backed up by Jessica's system. The first email was dated 23 months ago, nearly a year before the support group started, before the first hotel charge on our joint card. It wasn't physical then. It was something both better and worse, a courtship. Months of messages that started professional, great meeting you at Logan's holiday party, and became personal. I feel like I can tell you things I can't tell anyone, and became intimate in the emotional way that sometimes hurts worse than the physical. By the time they'd met at the Omni that December night, they'd already been building something for months. The party wasn't where it started. The party was just where they decided to stop pretending it wasn't real. I read the emails once, all the way through. The pet names, he called her Nat like I did, and she called him D. The plans they made, soon we can be together without hiding. The way she wrote about me. Logan is a good man, but he doesn't understand me. Not like you do. He doesn't make me feel alive. Didn't make her feel alive. 11 years of marriage and I didn't make her feel alive. I sat with that for a long time. Then I deleted the emails. I didn't need more evidence. I didn't need closure. The marriage was over. The revenge was complete. Natalie and Derek were living with consequences that would follow them for years. Her with diminished finances and a reputation in ruins. Him with a lost career and estranged children. I didn't need to carry their story anymore. That evening, I stood on the balcony of my condo, watching the sun set over New Haven Harbor. The sky was orange and purple, boats rocking gently at their moorings, the distant sound of traffic somewhere below. Somewhere in the city, people were falling in love and falling apart, building lives and destroying them, finding happiness and losing it. My phone buzzed. Rachel. Still on for dinner Saturday? That Italian place you mentioned? I've been craving carbonara. I smiled. Small, but real. Wouldn't miss it, I typed back. I walked inside, leaving the door open behind me. Cold November air, same as a year ago, but different now. It meant something different. It meant I'd survived. I poured myself a bourbon, held it up to the light from the window, drank it slow. The parking lot at Grace Lutheran Church is probably full on Thursday nights now. Bible study back in session. Faithful people seeking whatever faithful people seek. Normal life going on in normal ways. I drive past it sometimes. I don't slow down. I don't think about what it meant. I just keep driving.